Today, we're going to be learning about how to multiply and divide fractions. Here's a quick outline of what we're going to be doing. For multiplying fractions, you have to multiply the numerators together, then you multiply the denominators together, and then you simplify. For dividing fractions, we find a reciprocal, we multiply the numerators, we multiply the denominators, and we simplify. Pretty much today, what we're going to be doing is a lot of multiplying. This many patties is probably Angry Cat's worst nightmare, but we're going to do it anyway. So Patty does have a problem for us today. As we all know, Patty loves bones, but he also loves to hide them all over the place. Now this makes Mr. H very angry, especially when he finds bones in his newspaper or in his favorite pink slippers. And then Patty has to make a face like this so that he doesn't get in trouble. Or like this. But in the end, his goal is to get more of these. Anyways, Patty already knows that his owners only find 4/5 of the bones that he hides. Out of his own curiosity, Patty wondered how he can multiply this number by another fraction. Okay, so out of all of the bones that Patty hides, his owner finds 4/5 of them. This means that not all bones that Patty hides are found. Patty's still wondering. He knows that Fred, hello Fred, he knows that Fred from across the street gets 5 out of 6 bones that he hides discovered by his owners. Patty wonders what fractions he would get if he multiplied the fraction of hidden bones together. So Fred, from across the street, gets 5 out of 6 bones discovered by his owners when he hides them. 5/6. What Patty wants to do is multiply the fraction of bones that he gets found by the ones that Fred gets found. So it looks something like this. Patty gets 4/5 of his bones found. Fred gets 5/6 of his bones found. So, how would Patty figure this out? Well, as it turns out, when we multiply fractions, we start by multiplying the numerators together. Our numerators are the numbers on top of the fraction line. So in this case, we would be multiplying 4 by 5. After that, we would do the same for the denominator, multiplying the denominator by the denominator, 5 times 6. In the end, we would get something like this. 4 times 5 is 20. 5 times 6 is 30. And that's it. You just multiply the numerators to get the new numerator, and you multiply the denominators to get a new denominator. Make sense? Fred and Patty are pretty pleased with you right now. Now, there's a little thing called simplifying. When we simplify, we make a big fraction with big numbers, like 20 and 30, come down and be more simple to understand. What we do is we find the highest number which both numbers can be divided by. So basically, we have to find a common number that both 20 and 30 can be divided by, and the highest one at that. Let's look at 20. 20 can be divided by 2, it can be divided by 4, it can be divided by 5, and it can be divided by 10. For 30, it can be divided by 3, by 5, by 6, and by 10. You'll notice that the greatest number that both numbers have in common when dividing is 10. You'll notice that both also have 5. But what we look for when we simplify is the greatest number that both numbers can be divided by. So we simply would divide 20 and 30 by 10. What do you think our new fraction would look like? If you said 2 over 3, you're right. Because 20 divided by 10 is 2, and 30 divided by 10 is 3. What about dividing? This is also something we need to learn, and Patty's definitely curious. What we do is we find a reciprocal. That means flipping the second fraction upside down by switching the numerator with the denominator. Let's say if we wanted to divide 1/2 by 3/8. 1/2 is our first fraction, and we flip our second fraction upside down, 3 over 8, and it would look like this, 8 over 3. You just switch the position. So our second step would look like this, 1 over 2 times 8 over 3. You'll notice that we now have to multiply. All we have to do after we find a reciprocal is multiply like we would normally. Why don't you take a moment and solve this equation before we move on? If you got 8 over 6, you're right. Because 1 times 8, 1 times 8 is 8. And 2 times 3 is 6. 8 over 6. Now, if we wanted to make a mixed number, we just have to consider this complicated 8 over 6 as pizza. Let's pretend that this pizza is cut up into 6 slices. That means each slice is 1/6. If we have 8 over 6, that just means 2 slices from a different pizza have been left over. We have 8 pieces that are equal to 1/6. 8 over 6. If we want to turn it into a mixed number instead of an improper fraction, and of course, an improper fraction is when a bigger number is over a smaller number, we have to follow a simple set of steps. What we do is we divide the denominator by the numerator. In other words, how many times does the denominator go into the numerator? How many times do you think 6 goes into 8? It's 1. 6 can only go into 8 once, which is 6. 6 can't go into 8 twice because 6 times 2 is 12, and 12 is bigger than 8. The next step is simply keeping the denominator the same. Then, all we do now is find the remainder of our division and put that as the numerator. So if 6 can only go into 8 once, how many slices of pizza would be left over? It would be 2. 6 goes into 8 once, with 2 left over. Therefore, our mixed number would be 1 and 2 over 6. The remainder becomes the numerator. Here's a summary of what we learned. Feel free to pause it at any time if you want to copy it down. Thanks for coming.